to try to get some parents out here this evening. I know it's early, it's only October, but we wanted to talk to you. How many of you are first-time third grade parents?
Oh,
Ooh, that's a lot.
that's good.
How many of you are scared to death of third grade? Me too. I don't go in the lunchroom during third grade for that very reason. But tonight, we're going to talk about some things that you may or may not have heard about third grade, mandatory testing, mandatory retention. You might have heard those terms along the way. We're here to try to ease your mind about that. The teachers are going to talk. A bunch of people are going to talk. They're going to talk in educational language. You are always welcome to reach out and ask any question. You know how to contact the school. They're more than happy to help if it's not clear to you tonight. Okay? But we're here to ease your mind that we are going to make sure that your child gets across the finish line in third grade. That is the goal. 100% across the finish line, promoted to fourth grade. Okay? So they're going to talk a lot about what the retention looks like. They're going to talk about work like portfolio. They're going to talk about testing. They're going to talk about some things that you can do at home as well. I'm going to give you my soapbox here for just a moment. The best thing that you can do with your child, this is unsolicited parental advice, take it or leave it, is read with your kid.
Yes.
That is it. Bottom line, human beings have to learn things through practice. Okay? We can teach them all the skills about phonics. We can teach them how to blend. But if they don't practice those skills on a daily basis, that's where the misstep can be. Just read. Now, here's the caveat. You have to read to them. And here's the reason. They need to hear a fluid reader. They need to hear inflection in your voice when you read, so it's not so, and the dog ran into the fire, and then it has to have that for them, so that they know that they can make funny voices in their head. One of the things that I did with my own child is we would change our voice. We'd read in an Australian accent, and I'd read in a redneck accent, which I typically do all the time. So with that said, please read with your kids. It doesn't have to be intense. It doesn't have to be more than 15 minutes, but it just has to be consistent. Us humans need practice every day in order to get better at something. The old adage is it takes 10,000 hours to become proficient or professional at something. That has a lot to do with reading. Okay? And reading is what helps you with this type of testing, because even in math, and you'll hear this, reading is crucial. If you can't read what the question is asking you to do, you can't perform the math. The majority of the questions they get in math have to do with reading. When I say reading and comprehending. Okay? So I am Mr. Bynum. I'm the principal here. You may or may not have seen me before. I hope you have. I hope you have good things to say. But I also want to take this opportunity to introduce the third grade team that's going to be guiding your child the rest of the year. It is October 24th, and we are getting closer and closer to the end of school. It'll be here before you know it. Okay? Right here, I'm going to call your names, find you. There's Miss Buck. Give us a wave. Miss Hoover is right here. Miss Lewis sitting here in the front. Miss Mulaney also in the front. You can clap. Don't be afraid. Miss Spangler, I don't see
She's
her.
not here.
She may not be able to
And Miss
attend,
Pavlicek.
and Miss Pavlicek
And Miss Galvan.
and Miss Galvan may not be able to attend tonight. But that does not mean that they are all in on this. Again, the goal, 100% third graders being promoted to fourth grade. Okay, so sit back, listen, take some notes. You have questions, you know how to reach us. Okay, so if they talk too fast, don't worry. We are somewhat recording this, so in case you want to have a playback, you have nothing to do this weekend, and you want to listen to this again. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Morrison, who is our academic coach here. She helps with students in intervention. She helps with teachers. She helps a lot, and she helps monitor this information about third graders, because third grade, we are very dedicated to getting across the finish. So I'm gonna give it to her. Give her a round of applause, all the teachers that are here.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. It's always so nice to have all of our parents and talking about our students teaching all of that fun stuff. So I am the academic coach here, and I am going to talk about some of the icky stuff that we are a little bit scared of, and then some of the positive things that are going to be like, okay, we don't need to be scared anymore. So sit back and relax. If you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand, stop me. We are going to try to get you out by, I think it was 5:15, so that you guys could go have some fun. We really want to do the fun stuff before you go have more fun, but, so that's what we're here for. All right, are we ready? Are you ready? Okay, good. All right, so if you don't know, in kindergarten, first and second grade, our students come to school and they are learning how to read. So they are learning all of those phonics patterns. They are learning how to become fluent readers, like Mr. Bynum was saying. Look at those fancy costumes back there. I don't know how I can compete with these things tonight. So in kindergarten, first and second grade, our fabulous primary teachers are teaching them how to read. Once they hit third grade, which is still considered late primary, but once they hit third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade, they are really reading to learn. So they are reading content to learn about all of the different things that we need to learn about in third, fourth, and fifth grade. So once they get to that third grade, it's really tough to get them to still learn how to read because they're learning so much different content in such a, as you guys know, a very limited time. And third grade has so many different benchmarks that they have to teach. So that's kind of the difference between K1 and 2 and then 3, 4, and 5. Learning how to read and then reading to learn different content. So K1, 2 is more phonics, 3, 4, 5 is that comprehension piece. So this is some information about our FAST test. As you guys know, our FAST test, which is our progress monitoring, you might hear it be called PM1, PM2, PM3. That is what our students take. They already took the first one. You may or may not have gotten a letter about what that looks like because the first PM that they take can be a little misleading, let me say that, because they are tested on everything that they are to learn in third grade. Well, we don't expect them to do super well on that first one because they haven't learned it yet. That's why it's called progress monitoring. So we can monitor the progress as they go throughout the school year. So for PM1, they took that in August. Again, if you guys can go, or if you haven't already, there is a FAST icon on Parent Portal where you can click on that and it'll give you all of the information on the test that they already took. Okay. January is PM2. That's when we typically like to see a lot of growth. They have learned a lot from August to January. So come January, they take that PM2. We hope to see a lot of growth. And then PM3 is in May, and that's that final assessment. PM3 is the one that the state uses to say, okay, our students are where they need to be, or they're not quite there yet. So PM1 is that baseline score so that teachers can track and kind of monitor that progress. PM2 is that mid-year score, and PM3 is that end-of-year score.
Before you move on, I know if people were just looking for the slide, we don't have that one printed. So if you want to take a picture or something, you can, because I know.
Oh yeah, and this, I didn't print this one, but what we can do is, I know you guys put your emails on there, and all the teachers will have it. So if you want it, they can send them out to you.
There's also like a website that we have at the end for you guys.
I didn't want to print too much out for you guys and overwhelm. I know the feeling. I have a fifth grader now, but I know the feeling of being overwhelmed. So, all right. So let me talk a little bit about what our assessments look like for these progress monitoring assessments. They are adaptive. So what that means is if Teresa is taking the test, it will start me out on a third grade benchmark. Well, Teresa doesn't do so well on that. I'm Teresa, right? So Teresa doesn't do so well. So it might give her a little bit easier of a question to see, okay, where is she at? That's what I mean when it's adaptive. If she gets that one right, it might go a little harder. If she gets that one right, it's going to go a little harder. If she gets that one wrong, it's going to go down again. Because it really wants to level and see where they are at within those benchmarks that they're teaching. So the math test that they take, the FAST math, that is adapted based on questions. Every single question, it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. until it figures out where they are. The reading test, they take a passage set. So there's a story. It's got, let's say, 6 questions with it. They answer those 6 questions and then it adapts. They read a story, answer 6 to 8 questions, and it adapts again. So reading and math are a little bit different in that aspect, whereas math, they do it every single question. Reading is by passage. Something that's really different than what we've always been used to, really, is the students can't skip questions to read them ahead of time. Because what will happen is they have to select an answer to move on, and it's going to think that they either selected the right or wrong answer because they wanted to see the next question. But remember, it's adapting. So if they just select an answer, it's going to adapt incorrectly if they're just trying to read the questions. Whereas if it's a paper-based test, we always tell them, and that's been a strategy we've always used, read the questions first so you have that purpose for reading. But for this one, it's a little different because they can't really do that. It's all on the computer. So for the math one, they can't skip it, pick an answer and skip because it will adapt. There's no previewing it. So again, same exact thing. They can't read it ahead of time. They can read the text, or the text, and then the question. They can't read all of the questions and then go back. Question.
And they always pop back to the text.
Yes, the text is always there. Yes. Yeah, and the text, they can actually hit a button where it kind of pushes it to the side. So they can see all of the questions, and then they can bring it back in. Something else that's really important is, let's say for PM3 and 3rd grade, it will only assess them on 3rd grade benchmark. So what that means is there might be some really low level questions. There might be some really high level questions. So really easy, really hard, but it doesn't go beyond 3rd grade's benchmark. So they won't get tested on 4th grade. So if your student, let's say, scores a 5, that's not because they were doing 4th and 5th grade work. That's because they understand those really rigorous, very difficult questions, and they're able to analyze them and answer them. This is just the achievement level. So they either get scored a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. A low is that they are well below grade level. A 5 is that they are beyond proficient. A 3 is where we want them at the end. I always forget that it's oh, wow. A 3 is where we want them at the end of the year. That's on level. And if they are below that, that's when we really try to provide those interventions to try to fill those gaps that they have, which I'll talk a little bit more about. All right, so promotion to 4th grade. And this is the part that we don't really like to talk about, but it's super important. So as you guys know, or maybe you don't, 3rd grade is that mandatory retention year. So what does that mean? If a student doesn't score a 2 or higher, and a 2 is a little bit below grade level, but a 2 is considered passing for this purpose. So if they score a level 1, it is considered that they didn't pass and that they can be retained in 3rd grade. Now, so let's say Teresa scores a 1 at PM3, the end of the year, because that's the one that we really look at for this. And Teresa didn't do well. I had a bad day. I scored a 1. So now, oh no, what happens? There are many different options that we can still work towards to get our students to get to 4th grade, because our goal, you guys, is to get them across that finish line. We want our students to feel successful. We want them to be successful. We want them to move on to the grade level beyond. Not every student is ready for that, and we are well aware of that. There's very, very, very few kids that benefit from that retention. I mean, truthfully, there's lots of research out there. You can go look it up. So we do everything in our power to say, okay, how can we support our students? How can we provide those interventions? How can we close those gaps to get them ready for the 4th grade? What? The number one way that we get them into 4th grade, if they don't do well in this test, because remember, this is just one piece. Our students are a lot more than that one piece, right? Our kids are a lot more than that one test grade. So our fabulous 3rd grade teachers throughout the school year, they do something called portfolio assessments. You probably haven't heard about them yet. Coming soon to a school near you. So the portfolio assessments are assessments that assess every single benchmark that 3rd grade has to learn. There's 13 of them. they have to show proficiency on all of those benchmarks. So it is some different assessments that they take throughout the year. And once they show proficiency on those, they can have a good cause exemption going into fourth grade. So that's why the teachers start doing them, and they will start doing them in November. That's why they start doing them now as a just in case. So you will hear your children and the teachers talking about these portfolio assessments if they are concerned that your child may or may not get that 2 or higher on that test. So again, we do everything possible to ensure our students are ready and going on to that fourth grade if we feel that that's what's best for them. So that's kind of what I was just talking about here, the level 2 or higher. Again, there are different ways. The main way that our students go on to fourth grade, if they don't score 2 or higher, is that portfolio. There is something called an alternative assessment, and what that is I'm sure you guys have all heard of iReady, right?
Yeah.
iReady, it's fantastic. They love going on iReady every day. They have to get all their minutes. Well, on iReady, there's something called a diagnostic assessment. It's actually called the path placement now. They changed the name of it. I think it's
They've
path-
changed the name the last 3
Doesn't-
years. It's the same thing. It gets us a diagnostic
Mhm.
score.
So,
That helps us
with
understand.
that diagnostic, at the end of the school year, they take that one more time, and if they get a certain score, that could show proficiency in third grade. Again, that's another way. That's the alternate assessment. The portfolio we already talked about. If they have been retained in third grade before, they will not be retained again. If they are a student that might have an IEP, they will not be retained again. So there's some different ways. But again, the main one is that portfolio. This piece, this last bullet, and this is really important. Let's say your students are working on their portfolio and they have to have 13 at the end of the school year and they get to 9 portfolio points. Well, the district might say, we feel Teresa is ready to move on to fourth grade. She's proficient in 9 out of those 13 benchmarks. We are going to transition her into fourth grade. She's going to sit in a fourth grade classroom, but she's going to finish her portfolio points. Again, they do everything they can to try to move our students forward. This is just different ways that they're showing that they're ready. Okay, so just a couple of reminders, and your student's or your child's teacher will go over these during testing all the time. Make sure your child gets a good night's sleep. Make sure they eat a nutritious breakfast. I don't know, my child all of a sudden has it in her head, and mind you, we get up at 5:15 because we drive from DeBerry, that she has to have a sausage, egg, and cheese burrito every testing day, so I have to get up and make this. So I can't go buy one at Dunkin' Donuts. There's that, but we provide free breakfast, but she's not gonna eat that. That would not be good. Yeah, so provide a nutritious breakfast or get them here early because we have nutrition. Aim for those stress-free mornings, which trust me, I get it. Stress-free mornings don't always happen, but on those days it sure does in my house. So I hope that we can all agree that that's going to be what's best for them. Make sure they get to school on time. If they don't come on time, they can't test with their class. I will tell you, they will do better with their teacher than they will on makeup days. Makeup days, unfortunately, they might test with somebody they don't know. Our kids are not going to do as well if they're going to test with me instead of Miss Buck. They may not know me as well. They see me on the school news, they know who I am in the school, but they're not as comfortable with me as they are with their teacher. Now, obviously, if they're not feeling good, if they're out of town, there's nothing you can do about that. No stress, but please try to get them here on time. Encourage them to do their best, of course, and if they get checked out early, and this is a big one, parents will come and say, oh, we are, grandma and grandpa are coming into town and we're gonna go pick them up from the airport, or we have a doctor's appointment or something. If they get checked out, they cannot finish the test. Oh, and that's a real bummer. If they are sick, like I have had a child throw up on the floor, they can go home and come back and test the next day, but only if they're actively sick.
Testing is usually done in the morning.
Testing starts right at 8:15.
There have been times where like I'll ask the teacher what time are they done with testing because we do have to.
Yes.
But
Yep.
I'll make it around.
Yes.
And we have the
Yeah.
dates later in the presentation, so you can know, don't like black out those.
Exactly. Yes, and that's a good question because our schedules, of course, are all over the place. every single student during fast testing for 3, 4, and 5, K1, 2 is very different. For 3, 4, and 5 will start testing at 8:15 in the morning. Straight. They cannot have any electronic devices. The watches are usually the biggest thing, which they're technically not allowed to use them anyways, but keep them home. Because if they have it on them and it goes off, their test gets invalidated no matter what. There are different ways for test invalidation, which I've never had an issue with as testing coordinator, but that is the biggest thing. And I don't know if you guys have heard of smart glasses. Glasses you put on, you can take pictures or something. They're not allowed to have them, just so you know. But these are all ways that they would have that immediate invalidation if you don't want that. slfast.org is the parent website that you guys can go on, and there are some different resources. Again, this will be on the PowerPoint that is in the packet, and this can be sent to you from the school or the teacher. This is just how to get there. You would go to students and families. And from there are practice tests. There's some information about it. Not that. This is just a, little add-in on that attendance piece. When a student misses 2 days a month, they will miss 20 school days a year. They will miss 30 hours of math over the school year, and they will miss 60 hours of reading and writing over the school year. That's only with 2 days a month. If they miss 4, obviously that doubles. They'll miss 40 days a year. They will miss 60 hours of math and 120 hours of reading, which is crucial, especially in third grade. If you'd like to take a picture of this slide, this is probably the most important slide on here. These are our testing days. They are pretty set in stone so that parents can plan accordingly. January 8th and January 9th are the math tests, and they are taking math before reading this year, which they don't usually do. You guys want me to post? And then PM3, May 5th and 7th are the reading, and that is the final test that they take. And then May 12th and 14th is the math. Makeups go through May 28th, and it is always my goal in the testing life to get 100% tested. So if your kid's not here, they're getting tested, I promise, one way or another. All right, questions. FLFast.org.
At the back of there's a QR code.
Oh,
And it has every link that we're gonna be talking about right here. So
And this is actually from the FAST
Yeah.
website, both of these are, and you can take the practice test with them online with these too.
If you guys have questions,
That's-
please reach out. I have parents reach out to me all year about third grade testing, kindergarten testing, 5th grade testing.
We'll look up your.
I am always available. If I'm not available, I will return your call as soon as I can. Typically, it's the same day. All right. Questions, comments, concerns? Yes, ma'am. So 8th and 9th will be 1 week. The following week will be the reading. And the same thing for the end of the year. The 5th and 7th will be 1 week, and then the following week they take the.
And like, since we're in third grade specifically, the top state for those is what you'll be using.
3rd and 4th test on the same day, 5th test on a separate day.
Just to explain.
Yes.
All right, I will get that fixed and then we'll make sure to send it out.
Thank you for.
I tested it like before we sent it out and it on my end worked. So sorry about that.
All right. Ready? All right, we are going to transition to the other PowerPoint. Miss Beth, that I think is.
I did maybe put
Will be you.
I'm Mrs. Buck, and then I said, number son. So I'm gonna be focusing about like the nitty gritty aspect of the ELA, and then Ms. Cooper's gonna talk about math, and then we'll at the end give you some resources. I think every slide that we're going over is kind of along. So as she kind of mentioned, and this kind of comes through a lot of what Ms. Morrison already said, we are using a lot of the PM1 data to help gauge how to move your child towards the end of third grade. However, it does cover at the beginning of the year, the end of year standards. So at the beginning of the year, that was when they're tested. So we test 3 times a year, and every time they do the PM, we go through and create an intervention plan and try to figure out how best to target their instruction. which is kind of why we have that. I don't have one. So it's like a 3-step process. So inside of the ELA standards, there's 4 main categories that the students are being assessed in. So there's reading, prose, and poetry, which is like your literature. And then reading informational text, which is the nonfiction that they're more adapted to as like an adult. And then reading across the genre is going to be kind of a mixture of the two, and they have the same standards, but they're done within both. And then comparative reading, which is like comparing this text to this text. So a little finer tooth comb of what we just talked about. So this is the literature side that I mentioned. So literary elements, which is how one or more characters develop through the plot. So they start at this, then as the character kind of goes through the plot, and then by the end of the story, their resolution, how they have changed. The theme is like what we as a, like when we were growing up, it was called lessons. So what did they learn or what moral? And then students are learning like the author's perspective and point of view of the characters, and how that changed. So maybe this person felt this way at the beginning of the story, but their perspective changed by the end of the story, so that they no longer feel that same way. And then this final one, the poem on the literature side, students in 3rd grade are responsible for 4 types of poems. So they have to be able to identify the poem and then know what characteristics the poem has. So those 3 are free verse, which follows no rules at all. So I usually teach these first 3 and say, hey, is it one of these? It's not, it's that one. Rhyme verse, which has a rhyme in some sort of pattern, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like every single line. So if you have a stanza and then another stanza, it could be like 2 of the lines rhyme and then the same set. So we just kind of go through, and in our benchmark series that we use, and we have other resources, we teach them a lot of those skills to kind of go through and navigate that. And it's always the rhyme at the end. And then haiku is a special type of poem that's only 3 lines. And it's called syllables, and then limerick, which is a 4th type, which is a funny poem that's 5 lines and has a special rhyming pattern. That's different than the rhyme verse. So like limerick trumps rhyme verse. So then this side is all the informational. So in 3rd grade, we teach text structure, and we call it the 3 C's because all 3 of them conveniently start with a C. Here. So we have compare and contrast, how they're similar or different, cause and effect, so sense that's happened as a result of this, which is like the effect, and then chronology, which is like the sequence that is. And then text features is being able to, if you look at a huge informational text, you might have a heading, a photograph, a caption, and being able to understand what those text features contribute or add to the text. And then the biggest and probably the hardest thing for students to do is not necessarily figure out what the central idea is, like that main idea that we learned as a, like students, but figure out what relevant details or those important things support that central idea. So that's the one that we hit constantly. Every unit we've done it, and we will continue to do it all the way to the last day of school. Text structure, we started with comparing and contrast. Now we've done cause and effect and chronology. So at this point, we've found all 3 of those. And we just keep spiraling. And then the other 2, author's purpose and author's claim, we haven't dove deep into it yet, but we will be hitting it a lot in January. But we've been trickling in whenever it shows up. So that's just the reason the author is doing it, and then the author's opinion about something, and then whatever details support that. So I know that's like a lot of information. That's why we gave it to you, so you can kind of look back. See, the inside of your packets, there was a pink paper that has questions that kind of align perfectly to all of these different topics. So it has different question stems that as you're reading with your child, you can do. And say, hey, what was and frame it in that same way that the.
Or even watching a video, like
yeah.
watching a movie, watching a show, like, hey, what was the character's reaction? How did the character change throughout the story?
Yeah. And the nice thing with that is you can phrase it so that they're seeing and hearing that same language, that they're going to see on the fast test, which in just a second, I'll show you a couple of snippets and you'll be like, oh, I see what you mean. This is why this pink's used. So so then the other 2, and I'll kind of go through this is the ones across all languages. So figurative language, which is like usually non-literal things. and we have the 6 different types that they're responsible for in 3rd grade. I suggest probably just looking those up, and then you can go, oh, that's what that is. 'Cause there's a lot to remember. Summarizing a text, students are responsible to be able to summarize what is the theme of a story, and then what different events happen in the story that support that theme, and then similarly the central idea, and then those supporting details. And I always tell the students when they're writing a summary, and this is something you can do anytime you read anything or watch a movie, even movies are really good to summarize. It's not meant to tell every little detail. We don't care that the character went up a hill. We care about how the character got to the end of the story. So that's one thing that students kind of have a difficult time. We really harp on this relevant details because they'll put a lot of things that are irrelevant in there, and then they're like, but, and it's like, no, that's not going to help you remember. And then on the test, they actually have like select the 2 details out of these 6 that are the ones you would include in the summary, and all of them pretty much are irrelevant except for those 2. So that's why we need to get them to understand the difference. And then the final one, which is comparing and contrasting between 2 texts. So one of the things we like to do, and we actually did this last year, is we sometimes take a text and then maybe you can watch the movie of that text. Last year we did the Athens Theater went to Cinderella, and we had already read in our benchmark text Cinderella, and we compared and contrast how those were different. So it's like she said, it doesn't always have to be reading specifically to do some of these things.
Like figurative language, music is great for that. I mean, if you think about it, like you have all those in music. So
The one that I think the students struggle the most with is personification, because I would teach them like, hey, personification is when a non-human or a non-person is doing something person-like. It's got person in it. Remember, person-like qualities. So like if a tree is dancing, tree can't actually dance. That's figurative language. That's personification. A tree is nothing. And then finally the vocabulary. I'm gonna go pretty quick through this, but these are the different styles of questions. The biggest thing that I found that students struggle with when they're hitting a vocabulary question is they go, oh, I know what that means, but it's not always in this context, especially if it's a multiple meaning word, because not every word means the same thing if it's this person says that. And then as we've kind of touched on, the most challenging standards we found over the course of our VBAs and our progress monitoring testing is that theme, figurative language, identifying as poetry, comparing, contrast, and summarizing. And the poetry is really difficult because as much as we practice it, there's only so many times that we are able to do it. So that's one of the ones we really think you can practice with your child at home. And then when you're at home, practice summarizing whatever they read, have them summarize it, even if it's out loud to you. And then you can be like, oh, was that one important? Let's take that one out. Let's try it again and kind of practice that. Model. So a couple of the things within the fast testing is the question stems. So a lot of times if you look at those pink questions, they may have some of these, but I think it's more, but it'll say like select 2 responses. So on fast, it doesn't let them move on to the next passage if they haven't selected 2. But when we're taking our tests in our classroom, some of the platforms we use does let them move on. So one of the things they have to recognize is if they only choose 1, it's automatically wrong. So on fast, it won't be impacted, but on testing within the classroom, sometimes it does because the system doesn't let them only choose 1. Another one, which is really difficult for them, is a part A, part B. Some of them is parts, and then another one is a word choice. I'm going to move on to an example of each of them. So this is an example of some question stems. What is the purpose of pet habitat and pet habitat sections in passage 1? So this is actually a text feature question. You wouldn't know that if you didn't know that these 2 bolded things are headings within the text. This is a sample from, I don't know if it's in the one
I think it is.
printed. I think it's and then it'll say in passage 1, how does the author develop the central idea that people can learn about pet cats by watching wild cats? So this is an example. They gave you the central idea. Now you have to figure out how is it being supported. Then the dreaded select 2. Select 2 sentences from passage 2 that support the author's claim that Dewey had no problem finding place to rest. So this is an example, again, of how to do it. So this is a vocabulary question that they give you a section of the text, but sometimes the answer isn't actually there. So we always try and teach them when they're doing a vocabulary question to go look all over, not just the sentence that's provided. Then an example of a question sent for students. This is that chart type that I mentioned earlier. So the thing that makes this style of question so difficult is they have to get every single part right. If you get this one right, but these two wrong, it's automatically wrong. So that's one of the reasons we really teach them to look back and take each of these with like a fine-tooth comb. It's not that they're impossible questions. It does just take going back to the text to find the answer. And they're nice because they tell you passage 1 and 2. This is an example of a part A, part B with figurative language specifically. So their job in 3rd grade is they have to identify the figurative language, but then they also have to find why they chose like what the author meant by it. So in similar to the chart, they have to get both part A and B right to get the whole question right.
Half points, or is it?
Nope, it's all or nothing on fact. On our benchmark testing, it does do partial credit, depending on like the question. I believe the select B applicant. But on fast, it's all or
Everything is multiple. No.
there's no typing questions in any of the tested on the until 4th grade. There's a typing.
There's none of math either, right there? Do they have to type in?
There's some that they have to type numbers for math. But I'm gonna hand it over and then I'll come back in a second. She's gonna take over Ms. Hoover for math.
Okay, so I mean, we right now are like knee deep in multiplication, and we've been working on that. We're going to be going over division, and eventually we're going to be going on to measurement, geometric reasoning, and data analysis. One of the biggest problems with kids is that is the multi-step word problems, and then we also found the number line. So like even if you like get a ruler out and just like practice skipping on the number line, number sense and operations was another weak point. Fractions we haven't been there yet, but I've been sprinkling it in just to get them exposed to it, because it really is exposure. We have to expose them because a lot of these things they haven't seen, especially like in language arts and ELA. We have changed the language from what they have known. So like multiplication, they've done it, but they haven't done it with the actual what it is. So we got to make sure we are, keeping on and like building on what they've already done. So we have adding and subtracting with procedure reliability, and that is to 1,000, 10,000.
10,000 for
10,000.
adding.
And then we have the multiplication division, multiplication properties, understanding that distributive property, the chapter 2 test. I mean, across the board, the kids, we did it, but we have done so much more with the distributive property since then. All the kids that have taken it, they'll do a lot better on the test. So, just keep on going and reviewing the thing. Word problems, rounding, that was another problem. We only touched it in the beginning. So we got to like keep on bringing it back. So these are some of what they look like. I know, and I gave you guys this on purpose. The kids, they don't want to do the work and like actually like solve each of these. And so even your smart kids, some of the smart kids are just like, man, I got it, but they didn't quite go and do every single problem. And so we really try to emphasize, make sure you're checking your work. Even if you have to take 5 pages to solve one problem, let's go and check our work. So we're trying to really emphasize that. So like looking at these, this is kind of what, this is actually what they do see. Ordering the fractions, that's a difficult skill. That's the number line thing, and understanding where it would fall on that number line. Finding the equivalent to a whole number. I don't like, when we get them to draw it out, it does usually help solidify what we're working on. So we have some more questions. Sometimes they do have part A, part B for these, and they do, like she was saying, you have to get it right, or they mark it wrong. the area and the perimeter, that's like way down the road.
And that's the
But
two
it's-
slides that we just had. We were gonna touch most of the second half of this.
It's like in
Which is
January.
normal, so
and
it's
this is
okay on
like-
PM2.
It's January, March. It's the April area. Area.
We'll have taught area in December, but
Okay.
perimeter, we don't touch until closer to the test, just to get the patient
And-
of our test.
I mean, we're kind of doing area with that multiplication and creating arrays, but we're not quite there. And oh, it works. Oh, I touched it twice and it went
It's
back.
okay.
All right.
I had that.
Um, And so this is actually kind of something we have been working on, creating an array, but then having the rows and the columns for the multiplication. So this right here, like Kate could add, subtract, multiply, or divide the side length of 4 and 8. It's a lot of reading. And it's like this is a lot of reading, and they have to be able to read it, understand what they're doing, and break it down to, can I analyze this problem? Before, and I taught, at the school, I taught first and second, and now I'm in my second year in third grade. We were reading the math problems to them. I don't know if they're still doing it, but first grade, we read we would read it to them, like everything. So now they have to, they're meant to read it themselves and be able to think and analyze that problem. And it's a lot. There's a lot. So like that, looking at data is usually pretty easy with kids, with everybody. This is, but it's still a lot of
It's 4
reading.
bubbles they have to do to get that question correct.
A lot of reading, and then they have to bubble everything in to make sure that, and it's not bubble, but yeah, but like make sure they're clicking or touching the screen in the right one. And it's like, they could do 2 students, if they pick 2 students up here, the rest is not going to be right. And so it's a lot. So this is a great resource just because you will see, like, on here, there are some that have more than one answer choice. There's some that has like almost all of them. And then these 2 came from the FAST website. They also have on there the online version of these. And then there's some other resources, and we can give you a ton. We just, there's a lot out there that is valuable. And I know, like all these things, iReady, IXL, Bottle, these are things that we can track. And Ms. Hoskins for Bottle, she does a great job aligning what we're doing for standards. And so she'll even put challenges out there for that. And then the IXL, like all assigned stuff, what we're working on, or maybe it's a weak point, or if it is a strong point, like you can go to a higher grade level on IXL with it. And then iReady is something we use religiously in our classrooms. And then if you want to take it away.
Yeah, the biggest thing I want, we're gonna, because of interest of time, we have all these stuff printed for resources, is in order to access, IXL, you have to go on through portal. If you try and go on to IXL without the portal, it's not gonna let them, and it'll say after 15 minutes, you've used up your 15 minutes. So when you're doing IXL or iReady specifically, those are through the portal. You click the icon and then you go on. If you have any issues with your child using like a tablet, and getting onto iReady, just let your teacher know. I had a student have that happen and we were able to problem solve it. Ms. Hopkins really good at that.
The password is not that.
The password has
Changed, yes. It's
Your
there.
children are, I think,
They
pretty,
should be good.
they're pretty
And if they don't,
proficient
ask
at
your,
getting the
ask your teacher.
password. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Because that was what it was at the beginning.
Other variation of their birthday.
It is. It's
Caps lock, first month, first 3, and then their alpha code, I believe.
yeah. Wait, it's also their date, their date? No.
Their
sorry,
birthday.
It's just their birthday.
That's
Okay,
the-
sorry. I'm confused.
For the math, test, will they have access to that paper?
Yes,
Yes.
great question. So
Yes.
one of the things that we've been doing, like she said, with distributed property, they have access to plain white paper if they want notebook paper, and they have grid paper. And the nice thing with grid paper, especially with the area questions in distributed property, is literally then you don't have the mistake of, did I put too many circles or something, because the grids are already there. So we've been trying really to, this is a tool, use it, And with the distributed property, it makes that visual, so you can take a multiplication, write 3 times 4, and then split it. That's like, we have a first year, 3 times 8, and then split it into 4 and 4. So,
And I recommend the parents to actually do that. What I found out with my daughter doing this is that she was writing on the screen in class. And she couldn't do that with what I had at home. For that, I had to coach her to use piece of paper and so next to her, so that way she can kind of do the same process.
and I feel like with the reading test especially, because you can highlight, but you can't write on the screen other than typing on the notepad. So we use notebook paper or plain blank paper if the kids prefer that, to be able to take notes as they're reading or while they're answering questions. Because of that exact reason, because they get used to it sometimes in this situation. So we try and say, hey, you can use notebook paper and scrap paper all the time. So like you said, interest of time, there's a couple of resources like Moby Max that we have in here, but I don't know if your child is specifically set up, but if it's something you want your child to be, any of the teachers on the fifth grade team can create an account for them. So just know there's a couple of those. And then if you want any math standards, this thing is, I go to it all the time when I'm trying to figure out, it has sample test questions as well, so you can see what it is. So again, it's in your PowerPoint. And then the final thing I don't want to change too much. These are all ELA, but this code here, even though this QR code is on, this link does work. We did test it on this working code. So even though this QR code currently is not working, this link, I know it's small, it's working. So, nope, okay. I'm gonna say, try and zoom in. You want to take a picture so you can see that, because I know it's very small on your feet. It says, it's a Google site, maybe third grade, PTE, USP. So we really appreciate you being here today.
Yes.
If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. If your teacher doesn't know the answer, we all work together and